All right, I'm gonna get started. So, this video is called Let Your Parents Off the Hook, Learn from Their Mistakes. And I kind of got inspired to write this or make this video. I've been actually uh, doing a lot more videos than I have been writing lately, mostly because of time, but also some of the things I've been writing have been taking me a really long time to process because I want to make sure that I work out effectively as possible what it is that's going on inside of me as I've been going down this grief journey. That aside, it actually adds to this conversation about learning from your parents' mistakes. So both of my parents were extremely fast processors. When they felt something, there was immediate or near immediate response to whatever it was they felt, whether they were right or wrong. And I learned from their mistakes that I should process more slowly. And so I started to write out my feelings at an early age because I didn't want to make the mistake of being as reactive as my parents were. So back to why I got inspired to make this video. The other day, maybe about 3 or 4 days ago, my daughter was talking to my wife and I. And as I watched her, I said, wow, I can see in that moment, the best parts of me and the best parts of my wife coming out through my daughter. And it was like just one of the most awesome things to watch. I was just like, whoa, this person, hi, Sandra, this person is the best parts of me and my wife. And I'm referring to my daughter for you who just came on. And so I just kind of looking at her and I thought like, wow, this is amazing to behold. And I got curious, am I the best parts, or hopefully I'm the best parts of my parents? Because I spent a lot of my life as I shaped the person that I wanted to be in the world, trying not to be the worst parts of my parents. But I actually didn't think about the best parts of my parents sometimes. And it's not that I thought my parents were terrible. I didn't think they were terrible, but they were not able to work out anything with each other. So they got divorced. They both held on to grudges. And so they always had this kind of like, even when they were apart, they were blaming each other for things across time and space and conversation and those sorts of things. And I just didn't want to be like that. And so I made a lot of effort into not repeating the behaviors that harmed me. And then whatever emerged at the end was whatever I am now. But I didn't think about the fact that I might be, or I may manifest a lot of the better parts of my parents. I was so busy trying to avoid the worst parts of my parents. But when I watched my daughter talking about herself and her ideas for college and what dreams mean to her, I realized like, wow, this kid's getting the best parts of us. Then a couple of days ago, right after that, I saw the worst parts of us come out of her. And I was like, wow, look at that. And it's the same true for my other daughter. They have different parts of us, but I can see them playing out. And I started thinking a lot about this world stage. Like for centuries and centuries, people just were almost like facsimiles of their parents. And when you look at the ideologies and some of the things that we see on display today, it's a lot of things that they learned from their parents, or they didn't learn from their parents, or they became the worst parts of their parents manifest out in the world. And it's sad because so many people put their parents on this unreasonable pedestals, and then they kind of work their way down from wherever their parents are. So if their parents tell them they're no good or dot, 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 they take that and then they work with that. And they never, not all people, obviously, but many people will take that baseline that was established in their household and they don't improve on it. They don't get better. They just repeat. And I'm thinking to myself, what kind of life is that? And what kind of suffering continues to be perpetrated in the world where people just don't learn from their mistakes? I've seen so many people, when I learn about their backstory, I find out they're just duplicating what was handed to them by their parents. I know people now who are basically carbon copies of their parents. And I don't know, personally, I feel like that's gross. I'm sorry. I feel like it's gross. Of course, there's some elements of a person that you might pick up because of culture. I've been exposed to a lot of people, so I've picked up a lot of things over time. Many of them are probably unconscious, but a lot of them are conscious because I intended to be around certain people and cultivate certain ways of being by exposing myself to people who were the way that I wanted to be. And when I let my parents off the hook, I let my parents off the hook when I was 15 years old. I just said, you know what? They're regular ass people. They make mistakes. They are not special. And I had already had that kind of awareness, but I definitively decided it when I was 15 because of an encounter with the both of them that just reminded me how I ended up becoming glad that they were divorced. When they broke up when I was like 2, I used to always hope that somehow, some magical way, like a television show, they would get back together. When we hung out with my dad for his 45th birthday, when when he and my mom were both single for like a little window and there was a little chance that they might get back together, that chance disintegrated pretty quickly. And I was like, thank God I wasn't raised with both of these fools at the same time. I don't think I would have had a chance. So, I lucked out by my parents breaking up. But I also let them off the hook and accepted that they were just regular people. But I found that a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people still want their parents to be where their parents never could have been. And when you hold on to that, you miss out on the opportunities for the things that your parents couldn't have been to make their way into your life. I have like so many people in my life that have been such blessings to me on so many levels because I let go of my parents. There's this story in the Bible where Jesus basically says, I mean, the words he used sound kind of messed up, but he's like, hate your family, like hate your father and mother and your kids, and like hate everybody. That's the word. It means basically put the love in the proper perspective and then not hold on to these attachments. But they just said hate. But then he said, you will get more of them. If you let them go, you'll get more of mothers and fathers and kids and stuff like that. And the mystery of that is that when you let go of people holding certain roles, the expectations that you have of those roles still make their way to you through other channels if you allow it. But if you're holding on to your parents being what they could have been, but they never were, you never allow the other people that can come into your life and bless you to be there. I've had like ministers, I've had um just people I worked with just come into my life and play that role. Sometimes they just come out of nowhere and have played this role to help cultivate the person that I hope to be in the world. But if I was waiting for my dad to be that person to help me learn how to be the kind of man I wanted to be, I'd be still waiting. And if I waited for my mom to be like, oh, I love you, like my mom, no offense to my mom, she was a single mom raising 3 boys in the hood, working for herself back in the day. And I was the oldest in the house. So she did not have time for me to be a child. So I had to be more like an adult at an early age and like a proxy husband, sadly, in so many ways, because I just had the responsibility for the kids under me and other things besides growing up poor in the hood. And so I like had to find my solace in books and stuff like that and just like whatever. But I became for a long time a very serious person who like didn't really dig affection because I didn't really get affection. And I remember one time I was like feeling really down. And I said to my mom, like, Mom, I need a hug. And she said, boy, you don't need hugs. That's all she said. Boy, you don't need hugs. But then she hugged my brother, which threw me off. And I ended up telling myself, like, you know what? I don't need affection. And whenever I felt like I needed it, I would just find it in like nature or whatever thing case may be. But then I started not even wanting affection from other people. So if anybody even tried to show it to me, I would shut it down because at first I was like, if I don't get it from my mom, then shoot, you know? And in some ways, that moment served me as I grew and learned, was able to come back toward affection. I literally had to go to massage therapy school to get to a place where I could like let people touch me and I could touch other people because I had gotten to a point at a certain stage where I just didn't want to touch anybody and I didn't want anybody to touch me, you know? And that was just what happened. And then I snapped out of it. And I feel really grateful that I snapped out of it, but it would have never happened if I waited for my mom. And my dad had all this like machismo things going on. No offense to him, so I had to learn how to be with women in a like loving and responsible way and to see women as equals, which I know they're equals. I was raised mostly by women, but my dad had just ideas that were old school ideas. And he tried to put that on me. And when I rejected it, he called me gay. So it's like, you know what I mean? So I had to let go of these people who were doing their best. That's what I tell myself. They were doing their best with what they had. My mom was an intelligent black woman in the, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, trying to make her way in the world. and forward trying to raise these boys, and society was coming down on her, and she did not have the time. I was just thinking the other day about, like, because of what my brother died, I keep looking backwards and like reflecting on our life, and I've been witnessing it with a little bit more grief than I allowed myself to feel growing up. As I've been doing that, I've been seeing like how hard things were on my mom. And so I feel like more compassion for her. My mom's got dementia. She got dementia when she was like in her 60s, like 64 or something like that. So she got dementia. She doesn't even know who I am. And it's sad because I see her now in this state where she has dementia, and she's like maybe acts like a 3-year-old, but a sweet 3-year-old. But the way I knew her before, she was super intense, and she carried that habit of being intense with me all the way until she got dementia. And it's sad, but she could not overcome whatever happened to her. And so my invitation to folks is, if you are carrying stuff from your childhood and you still are trying to work it out, like, do the world a favor and fix your shit. Like, and I don't mean it in a mean way. Just do the world a favor, because these people we see in these streets in Minneapolis, stuff like that, most of them got daddy issues. I worked with a lot of guys when I was in the military. I was this little teeny black dude with a lot of bigger white dudes because of the career field I was in. And I learned that a lot of those guys are very afraid. I was in Panama. One time we got deployed to Panama, and it was like right before we shut down Howard Air Force Base. And for some reason, somebody put a bounty on military people's heads. And these white dudes, they really didn't have time for me when we were CONUS. Some of them did. We were cool. I was cool with some of them, and I'm still cool with them today. But it was a few of them that I wasn't cool with in CONUS. And then when we got to Panama, all of a sudden they wanted to be my buddy. One guy who was like 6'4", he was huge. And he kept wanting to hang out with me. And I was like, why does fool want to hang out with me all of a sudden? And I was like, he was like, hey man, you going downtown? Hey man, you going this? And I was like curious at first, like, why is he hanging around me? And then we were walking down the street one night, and I was walking because I looked like a Panamanian, and my name's Pedro Senrina Ramos Montero Silva. And I had a Panamanian driver's license. Like, if I didn't say nothing, no one would even known I wasn't Panamanian. And this dude, I realized he wanted to hang out with me because he wanted to look like he was hanging out with a local. Like, he wanted to look like he was cool. And he was walking next to me, and he kept bumping into me. And I said, man, why are you bumping into me? You walking like crooked or something. You keep hitting me. And I was like, can you just walk over to the side a little bit more, or like walk straight? What's your problem? And then he just like said, no, sorry, man, sorry. And then I said, man, what's going on with you? Like, why do you want to hang out with me all of a sudden? Why are you always asking me where I'm going? And he just like looked like a little whatever. And then he just said, I said, are you scared? He was like, what? And I said, are you scared? Are you scared? Do you hang out with me right now because you scared? And then he was just like, man, I don't know how you do it in America being like the only black person, man. And then he said, I ain't never been around this many brown effers. So racist. And then I was like, oh my God. And I didn't hang out with him anymore after that. I said, man, you need to just like go out here and face your fears, man. You can't be like hanging around me for this reason. And then he was apologizing, but I was like, nah, it's good. It's okay. It's no problem. But we don't need to hang out anymore. And I didn't hang out with him. But I said, wow, this giant dude is like scared because he's around brown people. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, makes sense. Well, he probably got that fear from his parents. And they just said, hey man, be scared. Get big and eat a lot of cornbread or whatever you got to do, and act like you massive and tough, so that you can like basically keep people away from you and be intimidating. But in actuality, he was afraid. And another time I went, for some reason, went paintballing with a bunch of these dudes, and we were in the woods, and we like, we paintballing or whatever. And then we come out, and this indigenous, started saying that we were on indigenous land and that we didn't belong there. And I was like, I didn't know it was indigenous land or not. We just went in the woods and was shooting these paintballs. And then they started going crazy instantly. Instantly, they were like, doing all this stuff. And I was just like, what in the H? And then I just told him, I said, man, you look like an idiot. What's wrong with you? And one of these dudes that I was actually pretty cool with, I had never seen him turn like that. Soon as that little indigenous man too, soon as that man said that stuff to him, he flipped and was like saying his name, and he was in the military and all this other stuff. And I said, man, you sound like an idiot. And I was just, you need to get out of here. And I ended up leaving and giving the indigenous dude a ride back to his family's business. He was a little drunk, but at any rate, he was going off on these folks. And they just snapped. And it was a bunch of them. It was like 6 of these big dudes, just like how you see in Minnesota. And they went instantly cuckoo. And then after that, they weren't cool with me anymore because I called them out on their stuff in the moment. And then one of them did stay cool with me, the one who I was cool with at first, he just said, I don't know what came over me. But the rest of the dudes were like, and they had a sideways look towards me. Again, they probably got educated in that. Even though they had experiences that contradicted their parents, what their parents taught them, they still held on to that. And that's what a lot of us do. We have experiences that contradict the lies that our parents told, and we still try to live in such a way to make them right, even though a lot of times our parents were wrong. And sometimes our parents actually don't love us. And that sounds terrible to say, but a lot of times it's true. Like, people think that just because somebody gave birth to you, they love you. I've seen many parents that don't love their kids. I've seen parents that have been, how do you say, jealous of their kids. So when their kids actually start doing better than them, the parents put them down to bring them in their place because the parents had a mentality that they're always going to be above the kids. And then the kids, when they're young and they don't have those defenses, they adapt to that. And then there's always this ceiling that keeps them from living into their fullest capacities because of the shitty parents they had. But you don't owe it to your parents to be less than them. You actually owe it to the universe and to yourself to be more than your parents. I'll give you a couple more examples before I let you go. One day, my dad told me, I'm smarter than you, and I'm always going to be smarter than you because I was born before you. And I said, Dad, that doesn't make any sense because my grandma was illiterate. So I said, Grandma can't read. Like, she can't read. So if she can't read and you know how to read, and you can learn stuff, you already are smarter than her. And he looked like shocked, but he knew it was true. And I'm like, Dad, you already smarter than her. And I was like, and then in this context, no offense to him, because he was learning to speak English when I was younger. I was like, Dad, I speak better English than you. You know, I actually know English better than you. I can read better than you. I know math better than you. Like, you're trying to sit here and tell me that you're gonna always be smarter than me. And then he was just like looking like he didn't know what to say about it. But I had to tell this man he didn't know what the F he was talking about. And I said, Dad, it's like this, bro. And I explained it to him. I said, the way I want to be is where I want to have kids and I'm going to lift my kids up and hold them above me, man. And like, it's like a pyramid of all my ancestors. And right now I'm at the top. And then I'm going to hold my kid above me and my kid's going to hold their kid above them. And we're just always getting better and better and better. But the way you think is if you're smarter than me, that means your mom's smarter than you. That means her mom was smarter than her, and all go through the generations. So now it's a giant upside down pyramid of my ancestors crushing me into the earth, and I'm never gonna be good enough. And I was like, I ain't gonna think like that. That doesn't make any sense. And my dad looked sad, but then he ended up saying Shibla, and then he just kind of like let it go. That was his word of G's, like G's or whatever. He's like Shibla, and then he just let it go. But my kids school me. And when they school me, I just go, oh, snap. And then I just let them school me. And then if I do know stuff, I tell them like, hey, kids, I got more experience than you in this thing. But then there's things that they know. There's access to technology that they can deal with better than me. When I watch my daughter text, I don't even see how she can I mean, sometimes misspell, but I don't know how she moves her fingers that fast. I'm like, boop, bop, boop, boop, boop. You know, so it's not like necessarily holistically smarter, but it's definitely more access to information and other things as the generations go on. But if we think that we're always going to be beneath our parents, if we think that we can't go above the standards that they set for us and all of these other things, then we're going to use this new information in old ways. That's why you see it every time you see these emergent technologies, but we haven't adapted and evolved our mentality, then we use new technologies that could make the world a better place, like weapons. Like, there's so many things that we could do with AI, the internet, um, like this video capabilities and all these other things. We could do a lot of great things. We could create a world where every person can thrive. No problem. It's very easy based on the technology and the access that we have, all of that. But we choose not to. We still choose to use these things like weapons, like old school things, because we still holding on to these old traditions and these old stories and these old people that, no offense to old people, because I actually know some dope old people, but I'm just trying to communicate that if we do not let our parents off the hook and upgrade ourselves to maybe the best parts of them and then pass that on to our kids, then we're going to continue to live in the type of world that we live in. And I'm at a point where I can't keep watching history repeat itself. And if I'm around people that's trying to just be robots, I just got to like be done with them, you know? and surround myself with people who want to be upgraded, people who want to learn from their mistakes, people who want to face their challenges. Like I literally just a couple of days ago, I had to face a thing with my grandma because my grandma used to be my safe haven when I was a little kid. And then because of religion, my grandma snapped on me and went off on me and slapped the hell out of me. And that I just like accepted at that point that my grandma was too superstitious for me to have certain conversations with her. And so I just stopped. But I had to revisit it after, like I said, I've been revisiting things through the grief process. And I revisited and I was just like, yo, if I would have let that hurt me, how would that have felt? Because I'm assuming on some subconscious level it did, but I shut it down. So I went and revisited it and it was sad. It was sad, honestly. I was like, dang, man, that's what I realized. Like, I felt I'm alone in this world when my grandma slapped the hell out of me because she said I questioned God. Mm-mm-mm. So, all that to say that we have a responsibility to ourselves, to this world that we're in, the timeline that we're in, to wake the F up, learn from our parents' mistakes, or whatever. Maybe our parents were perfect, then learn from their perfection. But if they weren't perfect, learn from their mistakes, take the access to the best parts in them, and upgrade yourself intentionally. You do not owe it to people who have maybe not evolved to make them feel comfortable, because then we keep seeing the things that we see now. There's so many people that are in shock at how America is. I'm absolutely not in shock. I'm only in shock that it took this long. I'm not in shock that it's happening because I do pay attention. I've witnessed history. I pay attention to history. I'm like, ever since I've been still reading MLK stuff since like 3 weeks before MLK holiday, and I'm still every day reading MLK stuff. And it's like just get painting even a broader picture of how far we have not come. So my invitation again to you all is to learn from your mistakes, your parents' mistakes, learn from your own mistakes, and be intentional about the person that you're becoming. You don't have to just be a default human being, just like this was what was given to me. And then that's what, actually, I'm interrupting myself to tell you one more story. I used to go around giving money to homeless people and in exchange for a story. And one guy, I gave him some money and I said, can you tell me a story? And he told me this. He said that he was an alcoholic right now, but he was working his way up to coffee. And at first I didn't understand what he meant. I said, well, can you explain that? I don't know what you mean. And then he said, my parents were both drug addicts. And so even though I was a smart kid, I thought I was going to be a drug addict because my parents were drug addicts. And he said, just like how pit bulls have pit bull puppy, I thought drug addict's parents meant drug addict kid. So I became a drug addict. Then I eventually realized that I didn't have to be a drug addict. And so I worked myself off of drugs and I moved to alcohol. And now I'm working from alcohol to coffee. Then I'm going to go from coffee to sugar. Then I'm going to get off of sugar and then I'm going to be straight. Now, that sounds like some silly logic, but that was the best logic he had. But he realized that he did not have to be what his parents were. And even though he was still homeless and he was was using alcohol to numb some of the things, he was realizing that if he could decrease his way of numbing his pain, eventually he would be able to deal with it. And that's honorable, you know? And I think a lot of us unconsciously do things like that. But this man was doing it consciously, even though it was a very interesting way of uh, fixing himself or upgrading himself. But that being said, he demonstrates the mentality that you see happening time and time again. I want my children to be the best versions of themselves they can be. I made a mistake with my kids this morning, and then I text my oldest kid and apologized and tell her younger sister that I was sorry because I said something negative about somebody else. And I felt that way, but maybe I shouldn't have said it. And so I had to correct it. That's the best I can do for them. When I make mistakes, I can correct. And I tell my kids all the time, we make mistakes, but it's okay because we get better every day. So I encourage them to make mistakes and not to go out and just make them on purpose, but if they do, forgive themselves, learn from it, and keep going. And also to learn from mine and learn from the mistakes of the world. So that's a long video. I wish there was a timer up here so I could see how long I was talking, but I don't find out until the end. But thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this. If you get something out of it, please share. And most importantly, Pay attention to yourself, love yourself, reparent yourself if you have to. If you had a situation with your parents that just didn't match what you needed, reparent yourself, revisit that part of yourself that may still be hurting, and let that part know you're loved, you're valuable, you're wonderful, and you can do great things no matter how old you are, no matter how much you've been through. One of these days, I might write a story about it, some of the stuff I've been through, and you might be like, what? Yes, I've been through a lot. And I have been afforded a grace to match that. And that grace has been not holding people to the standards that I project onto them, but to hold myself to the standards of what I want to see in other people. Or as Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So with that, peace, love you, have a great day. Thanks.